Good morning everyone. Today I am going to discuss about thalamus. Point of discussion, introduction, divisions and subdivisions of diencephalon, then thalamus. Under the following headings, external features, internal structure, thalamic nuclei and its connections, functions and clinical anatomy. Then metathalamus, epithalamus and subthalamus. These are the point of discussion. Now first point is introduction. In this diagram you can see this is the mid-sagittal section of the cerebrum, and this portion it is the C-shaped mass of a white matter known as corpus callosum. Now diencephalon, it is that part of the brain that lies between cerebrum and brainstem. This portion is known as diencephalon. It lies between cerebrum and brainstem. Brainstem, as you all know, consists of midbrain, pons and medulla oblongata. So this area is known as diencephalon. It is also known as interbrain. The cavity of diencephalon is known as third ventricle. This space or this cavity is known as third ventricle. This is known as septum pellucidum, and when we remove this septum pellucidum, there will be cavity of lateral ventricle. So there are four ventricles present in the cerebrum, two lateral ventricle, one is third ventricle and one is fourth ventricle present here. So this area is known as diencephalon. Diencephalon, it is a basically irregular masses of the gray matter that lies on either side of the cavity of third ventricle. Now, diencephalon, it consists of two subdivisions, pars ventralis and pars dorsalis. These subdivisions are demarcated by transverse imaginary line. This transverse imaginary line is known as hypothalamic sulcus, extending from interventricular foramen connecting lateral ventricle and third ventricle to this cranial end of cerebral aqueduct. This is midbrain. Cavity of midbrain is known as cerebral aqueduct. So cranial end of the cerebral aqueduct to the interventricular foramen of the Monroe, there is a presence of hypothalamic sulcus which will divide the diencephalon into two parts. This is known as pars ventralis and this is known as pars dorsalis. Pars dorsalis, it lies above this sulcus, and pars ventralis, it lies below this hypothalamic sulcus. Now I will tell you what is the component of pars dorsalis and pars ventralis. Pars dorsalis, it consists of three components. One is thalamus, second is metathalamus, and third one is epithalamus. And pars ventralis consists of subthalamus and hypothalamus. Here you can see once again, pars dorsalis, it consists of thalamus, metathalamus and epithalamus. And pars ventralis, it consists of hypothalamus and subthalamus. Epithalamus, it comprises of pineal gland. This is, you can see in this section very clearly, this is the pineal gland. It is a component of epithalamus, one of the components of epithalamus. Epithalamus consists of pineal gland, habenular nuclei and habenular commissure and posterior commissure, which I will show you later. So that is about the epithalamus. This is known as thalamus, or it is also known as dorsal thalamus. In this area, there is a presence of subthalamus, is known as ventral thalamus and hypothalamus. So these are the divisions and subdivisions of the diencephalon. Now we move on to our main topic, thalamus. What is thalamus? Anatomically, thalamus, it is a large ovoid mass of a gray matter which lies above the midbrain. This is same, it is a mid-sagittal section of the cerebrum. Here you can see corpus callosum. Septum pellucidum is opened up. So here you can see this cavity is known as lateral ventricle. And this is large ovoid mass of a gray matter situated above the midbrain. This is midbrain, and this ovoid mass of gray matter is known as thalamus. Thalamus, it is separated from the midbrain by small amount of a nervous tissue known as subthalamus. There are presence of two thalamus, one on each side of a slit-like cavity of third ventricle. So here this cavity is known as third ventricle. Lateral to this cavity there is a presence of thalamus. So remember one thing, there are two thalami situated one on each side of a slit-like cavity of third ventricle. Now when we discuss measurements of the thalamus, length is about 3.5 centimeter and breadth is about 1.5 centimeter. Long axis of the thalamus is set as a obliquely. It's set obliquely, it is directed backwards and laterally in such a way that anterior ends are near to each other and posterior ends are separated from each other by means of pineal gland and superior colliculi. Here you can see this is the one of the section of the cerebrum. In this section you can see it is a coronal section, and you can see posterior aspect of the brain stem. These are two superior colliculi. This is cruciform sulcus and this is known as pineal gland. So posterior end of the thalami are separated by superior colliculus and pineal gland, and this small triangular area is known as habenular triangle. So in short, long axis of thalamus is set as obliquely. It is directed backwards and laterally. Anterior ends are near to each other and posterior end are widely separated by these structures. Here you can see this is the same somewhat same diagram. You can see these are the red color is thalamus, these are the anterior ends, and these are the broad posterior ends which are separated by superior colliculus, pineal gland and habenular triangle. So that is about the thalamus, how it is located. Now as I have told you, thalamus, there are basically two thalami present on either side of a cavity of left third ventricle. Two thalamus are connected in the center by interthalamic adhesion. This is interthalamic adhesion. This is sagittal section of the brain stem. Along with thalamus, you can see this is one of the thalamus and this is interthalamic adhesion. This is midbrain, this is pons, and this is medulla oblongata. And here this is a cavity of fourth ventricle. So in short, thalamus are connected, two thalami are connected by interthalamic adhesion. Now we move on to external features of the thalamus. Thalamus consists of two ends, anterior end and posterior end, and four surfaces, superior surface, inferior surface, medial surface and lateral surface. Now anterior end is narrow and somewhat pointed. It is known as tubercle of thalamus. Anterior end is narrow and somewhat pointed. It is known as anterior tubercle of the thalamus. Posterior end of thalamus, it is somewhat expanded. It is known as pulvinar. It is known as pulvinar. And pulvinar, it will overhangs medial and lateral geniculate bodies. Medial and lateral geniculate bodies, they are the component of metathalamus that I will discuss later on. So two ends are there, anterior end is narrow, posterior end is expanded. Anterior end it will form the posterior boundary of interventricular foramen. This paper you can see, it is the interventricular foramen between lateral ventricle and third ventricle. So anterior end, it will form the posterior boundary of interventricular foramen, and broad posterior end is known as pulvinar, which overhangs medial and lateral geniculate bodies. Now surfaces, this is superior surface, it will form the floor of central part of lateral ventricle. This is the lateral ventricle having a four part, anterior part, central part, posterior part and inferior part. So floor of the central part is formed by superior surface of the thalamus. Inferior surface of the thalamus in the anterior part, it is fused with the subthalamus, and posterior part is free, forming the inferior aspect of the pulvinar. That is about inferior surface. Medial surface, this is the medial surface, it will form the lateral wall of third ventricle. Here there is a presence of third ventricle, so lateral wall of third ventricle is formed by medial surface of the thalamus, and lateral surface it will form the medial boundary of posterior limb of internal capsule. This is a schematic diagram, coronal section of the brain. Here you can see corpus callosum, and this orange color mass is thalamus, and lateral to the thalamus this is the known as lentiform nucleus. It is a component of basal ganglia. Basal ganglia, it is a subcortical masses of the gray matter present within the white core of cerebral hemisphere. It is a separate topic to discuss, basal ganglia or basal nucleus. This is caudate nucleus, it is a component of basal ganglia also. So between the thalamus and this basal lentiform nucleus, there is a presence of white matter fiber. These white matter fibers are known as internal capsule. This is the internal capsule. It is a component of, it comes under the heading of projection fiber of the white matter of the cerebrum. So lateral surface of the thalamus, it will form the medial boundary of internal capsule. Simply remember this point. It is the same section of the brain. You can see this is a corpus callosum. These are the lateral ventricles, and these are the thalamus. These two are the thalamus, and here this is the lentiform nucleus, and this is the internal capsule. So lateral surface of thalamus, it will form the medial boundary of posterior limb of internal capsule. So that is about the ends and surfaces of the thalamus. Now, one thing I want to add here is, you can see in this diagram, a linear ridge of the white fiber along the junction of a medial surface and superior surface is known as stria medullaris thalami. It can be asked as a one-mark question. So, linear ridge of a white fiber along the junction of medial surface and superior surface is known as stria medullaris thalami. So that is all about the external features of the thalamus. Now we move on to internal structure of the thalamus. Thalamus mainly consists of gray matter and a small amount of a white matter. Now first I will discuss with you white matter. Now lateral surface of the thalamus, it is covered by thin layer of a white matter that is known as external medullary lamina. Same way, superior surface of thalamus, it is covered by same kind of a thin layer of a white matter known as stratum zonale. And third component of the white matter is within the thalamus there is a presence of Y-shaped band of a white matter that is known as internal medullary lamina. So white matter of thalamus, it comprises of number 1 along the lateral surface external medullary lamina, number 2 within the thalamus internal medullary lamina, and number 3 along the superior surface that is known as stratum zonale. So that is about the white matter. Now next is gray matter. Thalamus mainly consists of a gray matter, and gray matter, it consists of gray matter, it is in the form of number of nuclei. Number of the nuclei. You can see in this diagram, it is the horizontal section of the thalamus. It is a schematic diagram. So these all colored area, these are the gray matter. Now as I have told you, within the substance of a thalamus, there is a presence of Y-shaped band of a white matter that is known as internal medullary lamina, and that Y-shaped band, it will diverge anteriorly to form the Y-shaped configuration. So this internal medullary lamina, it will divide the thalamus into three parts. This is anterior part, This is the medial part and this is known as lateral part. So three parts are formed in the thalamus. They are formed by internal medullary lamina. Now I will discuss you what are the masses or what are the gray matter in the form of number of nuclei between these three parts. Nuclei present in the anterior part, they are collectively known as anterior nucleus. Nuclei present in this medial part, they are two in number. Large one is medial dorsal nucleus and smaller one is medial ventral nucleus. In this diagram you can see this is the medial dorsal nucleus. Now nuclei present in the ventral part, sorry, lateral part. Lateral part of the thalamus is again subdivided into two parts, ventral part and dorsal part. Nucleus present in the dorsal part from cranial to caudal, three in number, lateral dorsal, lateral posterior and large caudal nuclear mass known as pulvinar. These are the nuclei present in the lateral part and within the lateral part dorsal, and these nuclei are known as dorsal tier of nuclei. Now nuclei present ventrally in the lateral part of thalamus from cranial to caudal, ventral anterior, ventral lateral or ventral intermediate, and third one is ventral posterior. Ventral posterior is again divided into ventral posterolateral and ventral posteromedial, and these all nuclei are collectively known as ventral tier of nuclei. So these are the nuclei present in the three parts of a thalamus: anterior part, medial part and lateral part of the thalamus. Once again I will show this in this diagram. This is the schematic diagram. You can see in the anterior part there is an anterior thalamic nucleus. Now this is medial part. There is a presence of large medial dorsal nucleus and smaller one medial ventral nucleus. Laterally, lateral to this green color internal medullary lamina, this is the lateral part. There is two divisions, dorsal and ventral. In the dorsal part, three nuclei are there: lateral dorsal, lateral posterior and pulvinar. In the ventral part, from cranial to caudal, ventral anterior, ventral lateral, then ventral posterior. Ventral posterior has two divisions: ventral posterolateral and ventral posteromedial. So these are the main thalamic nuclei. In addition to these main thalamic nuclei, other thalamic nuclei are also present. These are number one, within this internal medullary lamina, there is a presence of intralaminar nuclei. They are several in number, but main of this is centromedian nucleus and parafascicular nuclei. So these two are collectively known as intralaminar nuclei present within the internal medullary lamina. Second is midline nuclei, or known as paraventricular nuclei, between the medial surface of thalamus and cavity of third ventricle. These are known as paraventricular or midline nuclei. Now, along the lateral surface, there is a presence of curved mass of a gray matter known as reticular nucleus or reticular nuclei, reticular thalamic nuclei. And last is pulvinar. This is known as pulvinar. So posteroventral to this pulvinar, there is a presence of medial and lateral geniculate body. These are components of metathalamus, but they are considered as a thalamic nuclei nowadays. So these are the other thalamic nuclei. So try to remember the name of this nuclei. Once again I will repeat. In the anterior part, anterior thalamic nucleus. In the medial part, two nucleus are there: large medial dorsal nucleus and smaller medial ventral nucleus. In the lateral part, two divisions, ventral and dorsal. dorsally, lateral dorsal, lateral posterior, and pulvinar. These are known as dorsal tire nuclei. Ventrally, there is a presence of ventral anterior, ventral lateral, and ventral posterior nucleus, which is having the two divisions, ventral posterolateral and ventral posterior medial. And these are known as ventral tire of a nuclei. These are the main thalamic nuclei. In addition to it, there is along the lateral surface, there is a presence of reticular nucleus. Along the medial surface, between the ventricle and thalamus, there is a presence of midline or paraventricular nucleus. And within the internal medullary lamina, there is a presence of intralaminar nuclei. Name of this is centromedian nucleus. And posteroventral to the pulvinar, there is a presence of medial and lateral geniculate body. So these are the gray matter of the thalamus. In the next slide, I will discuss what are the connections of the thalamus and other remaining